Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our live video for our Duck Duck Goose project. Before we get started with our new border for today, I'd like to share with you some pictures of classes. I've recently posted on our website classes for August and September. We do have a couple of classes still left in July, but they are sold out. So I've got them to share with you. Let me find the right screen. So I've got a whole bunch of classes across the top that I'll share with you and share with you what the dates are. So the first one is this one. It's the Ruby Star Cascade, and we've done that. We have that class coming up on Saturday, but it is sold out. So it will be offered again Thursday, September 1st. All of these classes are on our website, and you can go to our website and buy the class online. You can either do the class in person, we're very limited on space, or you can do via Zoom. So those are an option for you. This one is a new class this time. It's called Carnival. If you've been in the shop, it's actually hanging in the shop. And it uses the corner beam, the wing clipper, the diamond Rex tool, and the square tool. So that's coming up. It's called Carnival, and your choice of times are August the 17th, that's a Wednesday, or Saturday, August 27th. And that was also on our website. The next one is Morning Star. This one was a fun one. We've done this class once already, and we have that class scheduled again in Thursday, August 18th, or Saturday, September 17th. And so just because I want you to know it's possible, you can make this using the same techniques, same tool. And if you look at this quilt carefully, it's actually behind me over here. It measures 11.5 inches finished. So it's possible to make tiny blocks. These are 3-inch blocks versus the 12-inch blocks that are in the classroom project. So I got it finished and hung it on the wall behind me. But Morning Star is coming up Thursday, August 18th. It's Saturday, September 17th. Your next option is Stacked Star 60. And this is using Deb Tucker's Star 60 tool. This one is actually a stacked pattern where you stack the patterns of the print and you cut your pieces out of it. So you get kind of a kaleidoscope look. All the blocks came from the same print fabric. Now you can also just pick a fabric you like and not stack it, but just cut the pieces where you use the same fabric, but not necessarily in a kaleidoscope look. So that one is Stacked Star 60, and it will be Friday, September 9th. This one is the hearts, the charmed hearts. Oops, wrong handles. Here we go. This one's charmed hearts. And it is Saturday, September 24th. This was one block of it, just so you can see what one block looks like. That's Saturday, September 24th. This one, I gave it a new name, by the way. This one is our V-block lanterns. And I decided it makes me think of patio lanterns. And so I named it Garden Party. I finally got the pattern finished, so that's why it has a new name. So in the book, or on our website, it lists it as Garden Party, also known as V-block lanterns. And your choices for that one is Saturday, September 10th, or Thursday, September 15th. So that's coming up. And then this one is called Duplicity. That's this one. And a lot of my patterns start with fat quarters because it's easy to do scrappy that way. Duplicity, your choice of times is Saturday, August 20th, or Wednesday, August 24th. And all of these are on our website. Also, in our handouts for this week, I'll include a calendar just so you can have just a quick place to look at those all at once. And this one is called Give It a Whirl. It uses the Rapid Fire Lemoyne Star tool and the Wing Clipper tool. And it is your choice of Wednesday, September 21st, or Saturday, October 8th. So those are some classes that are coming up, and hopefully you'll be able to join us. All of our classes are, I've called them hybrid. That means you can come in person and take the class here, as long as we have seats left, or you can take it via Zoom from home. So some people like to take the classes via Zoom from home, and so that's going to be an option for you. So all of those are available, and you can see those here in the shop when you come by. So tonight we're going to add a new border to our quilt. Behind me is the Duck Duck Goose project. It has a 12-inch block in the center. Then there's a ring of units around it, the gold units. There's a plain black border, and then the Wild Goose Chase border, and another plain black border. So tonight we're going to add a Migrating Geese border. I thought that was appropriate. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about Migrating Geese. This is one of the few techniques of Deb's that does not use a specific ruler. The Migrating Geese technique sheet, if you don't own it, you need to get it, because it is a fun thing to add as a border. It tells you on the sheet, it is a standalone project. The stars are your level of difficulty indicator. And I'm going to tell you, I almost think it should just be 1 star, because it works really easily. And I'm going to kind of show you what to do tonight. So on my on top of the technique sheet, I have some squares, and I'm going to show you kind of the process, and then we're going to play what if, and I'll explain that a little more. So I have my squares. I have some squares that are going to be background. Let me show you real quick where we're headed. Right here. There is our Migrating Geese. And so I'm actually going to make a couple of strips like this one right here. And each border has 2 of those strips, and they're nose to nose. You can arrange it in other different ways, but that's just the way I decided to arrange this particular group. And so it starts out, the instructions on the technique sheet give you the starting measurements for the size you're after, and it also gives you information and picture graphics of how to put the pieces together. So in order to make this Migrating Geese border, you're going to need squares of color and squares of background, and your instruction sheet tells you what size you're going to cut. And so I have on my table here some background squares, get rid of that one, and some colored squares. And I'm going to leave the background squares as they are, but the colored squares I'm going to cut in half. So I've already cut some in half, and I'm going to buddy up the background squares and the triangles. So I'm just going to grab a triangle and a background square, and I'm going to match up a corner, and then there's going to be a little ear sticking out, which is the way I want it. And I'm ready to stitch, and I'm just going to stitch down the side, and I like to sew from the corner toward that little point. This is, oh, by the way, one of the few things in Deb's techniques that you will not trim down. So you're going to need to do your best sewing and your best cutting to get your best results. So I'm just going to stitch right down the edge, because everything is cut to size. Kind of an unusual thing for her. And I'm going to grab another triangle and another square, and I'm going to buddy those up. I got almost too close to the selvage, but it's going to be in the seam allowance, so I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm just aligning the edge here. And I'm just going to stitch right down the edge. Now you could stitch, you know, like an L on all of them, but I tend to assembly line sew. So that's just kind of how I've got it set up. I think I'll do this gold one. I'm just going to do 3 of them for right now. So you can see the process. And I'm going to line that up right on the edge. And I'm just using my 1/4 inch patchwork foot as my guide to stitch along the edge. Once you get however many you want to play with at a time stitched, you can cut them. Now, by the way, I could have made all of my colored squares the same color, and I did play with that when I was stitching, but I like scrappy. So if I'm doing scrappy, Tony just said, how many fat quarters would you recommend? I don't know if she's asking that, if that's a question, but if I'm doing scrappy, I generally pick 7, 9, 11, 13. Do you get a pattern there? I use an odd number as a general rule of fat quarters in order to get a nice variety. Even if 5 fat quarters will do the job, sometimes I use 9 or 11 fat quarters just so I have more variety. And because my whole project is scrappy, I've probably got 15 fat quarters that I'm playing with off and on these blocks. And since I've picked a theme of Civil War fabric, I can always throw in a new fat quarter, even if it's not in one of the previous borders. It's still going to work fine because I'm anchoring it with that black print border. And you probably can't see that necessarily from the camera, but I actually have 2 different black fabrics behind me. On that, I've got, let me see if I've got a piece of a black, of both black, so I can show you up close. Nope, I don't. Sometime, oh, I know where they are. Hang on. These are the 2 pieces of black that I'm using. And I've got one border. Let me turn this into the overhead or the needle camera. These are the 2 pieces of black I'm using on that project behind me. The inner border, the first border, the pieces in my center block are this black. That outer border on the outside edge is this. So I've still got that black and gold thing going on. It's still kind of a Civil War look. This is actually a Kim Deal fabric. So that's just kind of how I'm anchoring everything so it works together. And I'm using gold more than once. I have a new gold today that's not in there yet, but that way that kind of anchors everything. So I have my background squares stitched with the colored triangle on 2 sides. Now I'm going to take this to the cutting area so you can see what I do with it next. Now at this point, I'm going to get my iron going so you can see what I'm going to do. I'm just going to grab a tool that I can cut. I've had a rotary cutter disappear and who knows what happened to it, but I'm going to cut corner to corner across that colored triangle so that I'm left with 2 of these. Now notice I get a righty and a lefty. That's pretty important. So I'm going to separate them into a stack of rights and lefts. I'm going to do it again. And one more time. So with all of the pieces that you're doing, this is how you start. So I have a whole stack of righties and lefties. And then when I'm ready to press it, I want to press toward the color, the goose. Now, it is possible to put a color here and a background color there, and I'll explain more about that a little bit later. That is just a personal preference in how you color your quilt. So you do have that option. So this is what you're doing next. You're just going to give it a little finger press so you make sure you get those creases all going the same and you don't have any little tucks that you didn't expect. And if you haven't ever used these wool pressing mats, you'll find that you don't have to chase your fabric around. If you've ever, I used to use the silver ironing mats, ironing board covers. But if you've ever used one, they're kind of slippery and your fabric kind of slides around. It does not slide on these wool pressing mats, which makes it nice. So we have a whole stack of righties and lefties. And let me get some more. I have some that I had done the other day. And I chose to use all the same background on this, but you wouldn't have to. So here is a stack of righties and lefties. Oops, that goes that way. So you can see how they're flying. So think about the geese flying north. So the next thing you're going to do is grab your seam ripper and you're going to pick a righty and a lefty. I'm going to pick a different color just so you can see what happens. So I've got a righty and a lefty, and I'm going to actually take the bottom seam out. Now, if I want all of my geese to start on the same side, then I would not have taken out a righty and a lefty. I would either have taken out two righties or two lefties. So I'm going to just real quickly press out that seam. And if you're thinking ahead, which I didn't, but if you're thinking ahead, you could actually go ahead and take this out before you press that seam back. But since I never know exactly which color I'm going to use for my starter piece, I just press them all and then I go back and decide which one's going to be my starter. So I've got, question? Oh, Tony says I need to move my hands up. Either that or the camera's down too low. Let's fix that. There we go. So all I've done so far is just press the crease out of the color. And now I'm just going to lay aside these two background triangles because I don't need them right now. I want to start with my starter piece. And I'm going to build one strip starting from the right and one strip starting from the left. What I'm going to do is start out with my color triangle, and I'm going to add a background piece. And notice it is hanging off the edge. Don't worry about that. We're going to take care of that a little bit later. And I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite strip. Then I'm going to switch, and this time I have to have the opposite. So I'm just going back and forth and put a right and then a left and then a right and a left, or whatever color that you're working with. And on this particular strip, you're going to need 9 color or 9 geese with your background in a row. Once you get to the top goose, and I'll stitch some of these for you in just a minute. Once you get to the top goose, you're going to take that triangle that you cut off. We're going to pretend that I have 9 of them, and you're going to stitch that across. And then you've got one smaller square that you cut into a triangle that ends the row. Now you can make, I can see you can't see that. There it is. There's my big triangle that I unstitched, and then a small triangle that finishes your strip. And on the strips that I used on the one behind me, I had 9 colors, 9 geese with the backgrounds appropriately. You start with an unsewn triangle of color, an unsewn goose, and you finish with that small triangle at the top. So I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and I'm going to put together several pieces so you can see how you actually stitch it. And I'm not going to stitch all the way to the top, so we're just going to pretend, because I don't have 9 ready. But I'm going to start with this blue one, and I'm going to build one as if that's my right goose, because you're going to build one as a right and one as a left. Let's go here. There's my strip, and I'm going to build 2 of them. Let me see if I can duplicate that. Nope. It won't let me duplicate it. Oh, it did let me duplicate it. Only I don't know where it went. There it is. Okay, so you're actually going to have one. There you go. You're going to end up with two of them. And they're going to end up nose to nose. So as you're building them, you may prefer to build them two at a time so that you end up with the right and the left. So you're going to make sure that you start with one of your strips of 9 geese that starts on the right and one of your strips with 9 geese that starts on the left. And you have to do that 4 times to make your ring around your geese. I'm going to move these over here so you can see. And I'm going to be doing this one. I'm going to start with the goose on the right. Let me see if I can flip this. Rotate it. Okay, there's where I'm going to start. So I'm going to start with my colored triangle on the right. And that means I need a left strip. They're on the bottom, of course. So there's where I need to start. And I want to match up this corner and the point. And there's going to be some places on this where it kind of hangs over. You've got some ears on here that I don't trim off just because I feel like it helps me match up a little better. So I'm going to stitch. My camera keeps moving by itself. I don't know what the deal with that is. So we're going to stitch right onto that. And this first one, remember, is the one that you have part of your background that just hangs over. And you're not going to worry about that because you're actually going to trim that off, and I'll show you what I mean. So I did this in a mirror image as I worked. I did 2 at a time, but for right now I'm just doing 1. Now the very first one that you do, you're going to press toward this lone triangle. So I'm just going to give it a quick little finger press. Then your next step is to add a right triangle. And a lot of people struggle with this because they try to turn these. If you'll think about these geese flying north all the time, it's a little easier to handle. Now I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to match up the corner. Ignore that ear because it's going to hang over, and I'm matching up this edge and this top edge. So we're going to go back to the sewing area and we're going to make sure we're lined up on the edge there. And I'm just matching up as I go. Now I will tell you, if you read the instructions and if you watch Deb's video, she actually does mark the 1/4 inch line on her triangles. I have to fess up, I don't mark them. I just sew them. And I don't have too many problems. But if you have trouble with your triangles lining up, here's what she does. She takes her magic wand, and that etched line goes on the edge, and some kind of a marking tool that she can see, and she just makes a little mark here on the triangle. I'm trying to get this where you can see it. And then mark on the etched line here, so that she can match up from piece to piece. I don't take the time to do that, and I haven't had any issues, but if you want to be more precise, then you're going to want to mark like she does. So after the first lone triangle where you press toward the lone triangle, you're going to press north the way the geese are flying. So I'm just going to give it a finger press, and then I'm ready to add a right or a left, because this one was on the right. Now I'm going to add one that's on the left. And to be more precise, I should take this and press it. I'm not going to take the time to do that because I'm just going to do a couple of these. I'm going to flip it over, and I want to line up here. I'm going to flip it over and sew on this side. If you need to pin, that's where I would pin, and then I would also pin here if you feel the need to pin. And the reason is to keep that seam going the way I want it to go. And I'm going to stitch right along the edge. I don't know why that keeps bouncing back up. I've got something too tight on my camera mount, I think. Now, take the time to take the pins out, or if you sew over a pin, slow down so you don't jam your needle up. And I'm going to go right here. I'm going to line that up. And notice, this is why Deb marks, and I'll show you. Because of the ear on this one, it's sticking out on the side. If you flip this back, you can see they match up, and that's what I want. But because it's flipping the other way, sometimes it's hard to tell whether it's in the right place. But that is why if you want to be extra super precise, you can mark it, and then you can know a little bit more surely where that is. So now I've got my starter, which was my blue one, a left and a right and a left, and I would just finger press this, take it to the iron and press it, and I would keep going until I have 9 geese in a row. Then I'm going to add back, we're going to pretend this is the end, add back the side triangle that I took off, plus the small triangle that it instructs you to cut. And that finishes the row. And then you're going to put those together. So let me show you what that looks like, because I have a strip already done. And we'll talk about what happens on the bottom. I've actually already chopped off the bottom of this one. But this one, I haven't cut that extra piece of the triangle off. So once you get done, all you have to do is take the bottom of your strip and some sort of a cutting guide and your rotary cutter. You're going to cut that part off. That gives you a square end. I've got 2 of my strips nose to nose like I showed you in the picture, and I stitched those together and I've pressed it open. So I've got a border strip here. So I'm going to stick it up on the wall behind me so you can kind of see that. I'm not tall enough to get it all the way up where it belongs, but maybe it'll stay. We'll see if it'll stay. Now let me go to the screen because I want to show you something. This is, I put the flying geese beside me, behind me up on the wall. So that's what the flying geese border looks like. You have other options for the way you arrange it, but I chose to do the 2 short strips, nose to nose. Let me find the one. I don't know where the one that I duplicated went. Oh, there it is. So I chose to do them nose to nose, and you could actually make them all go the same direction around the border. That's a little bit different, but that's something you can play with. So I was playing what if. So what if instead of a cream background, you chose a black background? Now, if I do that, I would choose to put a colored inner border. The border behind me is a 3-inch finished border. If I choose to do a black background for my geese, I will probably cut that down to a 2-inch finished border of black and then a 1-inch strip of some color. In mine, it probably will be gold just to repeat that gold color on the outer edges. And then another strip of color for the next border. On your handouts that we started with, all of the plain borders are there, and so they don't have to be all matching, but I thought that was one way. So while I was playing with that, I thought, okay, what if your background was blue? Or what if your background was brown? I've got another one in here somewhere. It's disappeared. I had another one. There was another color, green one, but I don't know what happened to it. It's disappeared. So that is an option for you. You don't have to stick with a cream colored background like the one I was working with our demonstration. More than likely, mine will end up being black with gold extra borders. That's just kind of what I'm thinking. I put on here another quilt that if you've been in the shop in the last year or so, you might have seen this. That's all Migrating Geese. All of them start the same direction. Right now, I have it hanging this way, so the geese are all flying south. But you could go the other way. You could even go sideways. And it just has 5 applique stars up in the corner. So you can use that for a row quilt. You could actually make just a bunch of rows, put a little spacer border in it, and there's actually a free download on the Studio 180 Design website for a quilt kind of like that. And it makes a great baby quilt or a charity quilt that you could make in a hurry and practice the technique. So Migrating Geese is the border for this week, and your handout's going to give you the dimensions you need to make a 6-inch border like I showed you. And then after I get my border on there, I'll take a picture and post it so you can see. And I'd love to see pictures of yours. I know some of you are following along and making yours as well. Some of you are collecting the patterns and instructions and you're planning to make it later. So any questions I need to deal with? That's Migrating Geese. And that's our border that we're adding this week. So join us next week live at 5 and we'll have some new piecing to demonstrate. Until then, happy sewing. Bye-bye.